Welcome to Beyond the Huddle, the Central Arkansas FCA podcast where faith meets competition. We're your hosts, Josh Ader and Zach Rose, and we're so glad to have back the guests that we had the first time around. Brad Bolding, head football coach, North Little Rock High School, and Johnny Rice, who's coached for over 10 years, North Little Rock High School, won 6 state championships, and is now working to come on FCA staff, raising support along the way and serving North Little Rock High School. So if you have not listened to the first episode, our very first episode, we highly encourage you to do that. So a lot of the things that we're talking about today is a deeper dive into that, to go into our idea of Beyond the Huddle. And we kind of huddled up last week or earlier for this first episode, and we just wanted to re-huddle again and go deeper past that conversation that we had the first time. So if you have not heard that first one, highly encourage you to jump in and hear what all these coaches had to say with the wisdom from their lives. And we're just going to go a little bit deeper and into how God is leading them, how God is shaping them and changing them, and all that and all those things.
Well, you know, they say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So who knows? We could have 10 episodes in a row with these guys on here. But no, we're super excited and grateful that you guys wanted to come back on. And I know there were some conversations off camera about there was still more to talk about, and there's still more depth to go here. And that's kind of like what Josh was saying. We want to go beyond the huddle. We want to go deeper because that's what we're called to do. Jesus always made it a point to go deeper than just what's on the surface. Like the Lord doesn't look on the outside. The Lord looks at what's in our hearts. And so we want to be able to speak to and speak through what the Lord is putting on our hearts. So yeah, we're super excited to have you guys back today. So
Volume 2.0, however you want to say it.
2.0. Absolutely. Glad you're here. So since we last met, I've had a chance to go home and do some it's just really odd for me to be on this side of the microphone. I usually have a microphone with people I can see that I'm talking to, more than 3 people in a room at a time, telling their testimony. I asked somebody to share their testimony with me, and Coach Bolding and Coach Johnny Rice, they both did that last time. And I think a lot of times people get so uncomfortable in sharing their testimony that they stop short of where the magic happens, of where they get vulnerable and they're able to cross bridges to relate to someone else going through a similar pain point. So I was telling Zach earlier, and I was telling a guy on our FCA board as we were walking this morning, everybody, the one common denominator of everyone in the world is pain. Most people run from it. They do everything they can to escape it. They neglect it. They suppress it. They do all these different things, but to know skills and strategies and hope of Jesus that he provides to navigate pain. You think of student athletes, sometimes it is a coach's job to put an athlete through pain so that they continue to grow physically and not. And there's other times everybody faces pain, whether it be verbal pain or emotional pain or spiritual pain or what relational pain. Sometimes coaches bring pain upon themselves for the decisions that they make. As we do as parents, we do the same thing. We say some things we wish we could take back sometimes we think that we're in the right to make our kids know that we assert our dominance, and looking back are like, oh, I need to ask for forgiveness, but I don't want to do that because then it makes me look weak and all those other things. In terms of athletes, there's physical pain, there's hurt. We learned in 2020 that there is pain when a season gets robbed from you during COVID, how the gift of sports gets taken away from you. And it was a great reminder that sports is a gift and it's an ability. It's not a given. And it's a gift from our Father in heaven that we have the opportunity and the platform to play and to play for his honor and for his glory. There's pain when coaches lose a job, they get fired, or there's pain not just for the coach, but also for their spouse and for their kids, and they're having to uproot and transition and go and do and all that. So along those lines, we've all had pain in our lives, and we need that hope of how to navigate. And what do you do? So I guess just to get the ball rolling, Coach Bolding, you shared earlier about decisions that happened at school and being let go, and living on school campus in the turf room and all those things, which I was really shocked. I was like, oh, he's being super vulnerable, and it's out there for the world to hear and the world to know. So what did you learn in that Valley experience about yourself during that time?
There's a lot of skeletons down there in the valley. So, I think the biggest thing I learned about me is that I learned about how much my family loved me. I thought, you kind of take that for granted sometimes, but when you go through those situations, you got to have your wife there for you. You got to have your family there for you. My mom and dad, all of them were there. So, that part of it was real special to me. I think it brought our family even closer together. I know my kids, they were all in the school, so they had to go through it. Like you said earlier in the introduction, I mean, when you go through these things and when you cause sin in your own life and other people are going to be affected by it, and so, there were some things that we had to go through as a family that ended up costing me my marriage, and those were self-inflicted wounds that I committed. I had an affair on my wife. It's not something I'm proud of, but it's something that when I was down in those valleys, I learned a lot about myself.
Sure.
And I learned a lot about Jesus. It's because when you're down there in those vulnerable spots, man, it's a tough place to be. So to be able to I was by myself. So, I mean, it's just me and Jesus. And it was just me and him one-on-one. And so there's just some experiences that is real intimate to me and real personal to me.
Sure.
But I mean, I cried like a baby many a nights on that turf.
So we talk about those experiences and we hear about pain in the lowest of lows in that valley, in that same season, in that same time. What keeps you motivated, and how do you feel like your perspective shifts in a time where you are at the lowest of lows?
Well, I was a Christian when I did those boneheaded things. So, I mean, the Holy Spirit was living in me. So I had somebody to go to, and I did. But I think the biggest thing that you learn down there is, for me, is how much my family loved me and who was really my friends and who weren't. Those people were around. People like him calling me. I was building a chicken house. You told that story earlier. I mean, it's just a lot of things. I mean, I honestly, I hadn't sat there and thought about a lot of it. I thought, honestly, whenever I was at North Little Rock, I had a big pride factor. I thought I invented football. I thought I was, and so when you get chopped down, it's get your feet knocked out from underneath you. God has an amazing way to wake you up, and it's not always fun to go through. It's pretty difficult, but made it through, and along the way, he points out all these different things to you that you need to get fixed. And, those are things that I've been working on, and I continue to work on. I'm not perfect. I'm still making mistakes. Gosh, I make them every day, but thank God for prayer and forgiveness, grace.
Yeah.
I had all that.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. We were talking a little bit earlier, and in the sports culture world, not that coaches strive to have this happen, but when you win and you continue to win over time and you have a legacy and you have a following, Coach Rice, you can talk about this too. Johnny, you can talk about this too. We put coaches on a pedestal and we put them up way up high and we hold them high and higher than they need to, because coaches are just like us. It's like pastors or lawyers or doctors, or it's just the profession that you're in. You have the opportunity to impact people and to lead them to go further than they could ever go themselves when they operate as a team, or it's personal development, personal growth. So how can we, as a from a coach's perspective, how can we in the rest of the world remember, and what pressures does it put on you? What pressures does it put on a coach when we elevate you, put you on a pedestal, put you on a throne that you don't necessarily want to have?
I can tell a story. Like my first years here, I've been an assistant I've been coaching for 22 years, the assistant for like 14. And boom, I come over here. Like my first year, I get the job out on an interim basis. He said, hey, we get the job on it this year. When the season's over, we're going to open it up. You can apply for it. So, and upset, mad about it at first, thinking, man, I've been here 22 years. And then I started thinking, man, we're going to be I got some players. Somebody's going to look good, so it might as well be me. So I got over that really quick. we go in there, we lose a game, like our second game of the year, but I didn't have 4 or 5 of my football players that played basketball that were really, really influential in our season. They were really helped. They were really good. And we go on a 30-something win, 30 in a row, don't lose in the state of Arkansas, win the first state championship in his 41 years, I think it was. At North Ark had won one in boys. And so here I'm like you said, Brad, I thought, man, I am the guy. I'm it, and it's really easy. Then I had a guy I grew up with. He's a little older than me, but he's always treated me like his little brother. Really looked up to him all the time. And he says, man, God has blessed you. And when he first said it, I'm going, what, he blessed me with great coaching talent or something? Or what are you talking about?
Yeah.
He said, man, the Lord he's really blessed you. And what y'all accomplished and all the accolades y'all are getting right now. We were ranked number 9 in the nation in that 1 year, and it was unreal. Then I had a former principal. He was a principal at one of the middle schools in North Little Rock, but he was one of my former coaches, and then we worked together also. And I came in and was sitting down with him, and he goes, this is your season. And I'm talking, he goes, no, this is your season that the Lord's blessing you. And so it took a couple of guys to, I don't say kick me in the butt, but to remind me.
Yeah.
And, from that point on, I try to be as humble as you could possibly be. And it's not always easy because people are, like you said, putting you on a pedestal, patting you on your back, telling you what you do. You're on TV, all this stuff, and it's really, really hard to do. But once I start in sports, or when you go through valleys and you go through difficult times and things get really quiet, they really get quiet whenever you're, like I said, you're by yourself laying on that turf. It's really quiet out there. There's where you can reflect. And I think reflection is one of the biggest things we can do as Christians, is to look back and reflect. And once I look back, I could see how the Lord maneuvered things, and for me professionally, to become the head basketball coach. Mm-hmm. I mean, that could be another whole. I could be volume 3 probably of stuff to get into that. But it wasn't until I got still and I had people reminding me, and the Lord's blessed you, the Lord's done this, that, man, whenever you stop back and reflect, man, you can just really see how God's maneuvered his steps and how he took this person out and put this person in your life and didn't give you this. You didn't get this opportunity that you really thought was the right thing, that you were upset about, and how the Lord's plans. But until you get still and get quiet, and it's either in a valley or someone grabbing you by the face and say, be still. I remember how to do that to my boys all the time. If one to look at me, I grab them right on the side of the head and say, look at me. And that it takes at that time sometimes to really see what the Lord has done, and how you can, really, until you get still, it's hard. It's really hard to do it, but it really humbles you.
It's a great story.
That humbleness is one of the greatest attributes we can have as Christians.
Absolutely.
One of the things I started doing at Parkview is just happened one day. I stopped in to get me a coffee at the convenience store. Then I made it a regular deal every Saturday. There's a lady in there would ask me, "Did y'all win? What was the score?" You know, when you look at that that's my way of kind of keeping me grounded. She didn't have a clue we even played a game.
Yeah.
Didn't know where it was, home or away or what, score or anything. You know, that was my way. Maybe God did, but that was my way of just kind of going there and kind of just keep you home. Not everybody knows you played, you had a game last night. 90% of them don't, probably at John Barrel, you know.
Sure.
So that's just another little thing that I do, just it helps me.
That's great.
Stay grounded. My wife's really good at it.
Well, we're going to come back and talk about her in just a minute. I know she's kind of sitting in the background, but there's a lot of lessons that Miss Jenna could really teach us and benefit. And we'll let you, not that you need to speak for her, but she's not here, so you're going to have to speak for her in your marriage and what you've learned. So if you're just joining us, we're here on the Beyond the Huddle Central Arkansas FCA's podcast with Brad Bolding and Johnny Rice, and picking up where we left off of the previous episode. So this is 2.0. You talked about reflecting. You talk about taking time. I think FCA's theme last year, our yearly theme, was 24/7. And in the world that we live in and the way that we go, it's go, 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 go nonstop. We're always connected. We have technology in front of us all the time, but we have to figure out as believers in Jesus, how do we separate? In the 10 Commandments, one of the 10 Commandments is to take a Sabbath, but how many people in the world actually spend time quieting their heart, quieting their mind, reconnecting with their Father in heaven to give them the ability to do more in 6 days than they could in 7 if they would work all the time? Our theme last year is 24/7, and it was based off of 4 ideas. You need to reset, you need to renew, you need to refuel, and then you'll be ready to go. So so you talked about stopping in to have coffee or what, if you were to speak to a coach who's listening, what words or advice would you give them about taking time in the middle of season, or how maybe it's not even in the middle of season, but every time you need to take some time to rest, recover, reflect, to reorient and come up with a better game plan. So if you were to speak to a coach, what would you say to them, or how, from your own personal perspective, how do you?
I'll jump. I had an assistant, one of my assistants. He was a great coach, great assistant, single, young, and it was basketball 24/7, 365 days a year. Never would turn it off, and so it made my job as a head coach a lot easier. I mean, he would have scouting reports. He would hand me scouting reports before I'd even ask for them, and it just blew me away. But when the season was over, I said we had an end of the year meeting or end of the season meeting, and I tell him, I says, "Man, you gotta find something outside of basketball." But he didn't really understand it because that's all he had. He said wasn't dating. He didn't have anything. It was, I said, "Man, you gotta have something you can turn it off and you can relax and do a bit like, so you can just rejuvenate yourself, like you said." And after having him, I really tried with my staff to initiate something like that. In basketball, it's long, and but there are breaks. I mean, from a Christmas break to and all that, and then when the season's over, you got spring break before you start off season. So I never really start anything. So we got Thanksgiving break, and we always played during that time.
Right.
But you had where you wasn't in school, and you'd have that hustle bustle of a regular school day, and then doing basketball too. So basketball, there's some of that. Football, it's like boom, start week 1, and you got 10. Then if you do good, you might have a 1 week break before the playoffs. Then boom, it's the playoffs. They were always really good, so I never would get my basketball players from Brad that played football in the middle of December. But
and then they won every game.
But it's just sit down and talking to them. But I think the best way to show a young coach is to model it to him. That it's not all 100 in there. You're not going to stay married.
No,
if you're locked in like
no,
that.
you won't.
And So me being able to tell him a little bit about it, but me being able to model, trying to be a good husband and making time for family when you got young kids or you got kids and having them involved in everything. I think that's the biggest way to show them as an example.
So you're talking about modeling. What is there a model that worked for you that may not have worked for somebody else? So you're busy, you're in the season. Is it a 24-hour period? Is it 12-hour break? Is it on Sunday you play on Friday, you go Saturday, you're back? So most people in football are in film on Sunday, getting ready for the next game, and next week everything ahead. But how do you safeguard that time with your family, with your wife, with your to reconnect with God, our Father in heaven, to have a relationship with Him, which is a daily walk, it's a daily task, but a whole 24 hours. What does that look like?
I think you got everything that I like when I purchase something new, or if I'm going to buy something or if I'm going to do something new in the program, it's always either going to be for winning purposes. Now, this is just football, but it's not including our FCA programs and anything like that. But it's going to be about winning, and it's going to be about getting my coaches home to their families as fast as I can. So if I'm going to buy something, it's going to save time and it's going to help us win. That's part of my philosophy. The other part is my wife's really good with talking to other wives, and sometimes it's tough on the wives. That's the toughest part. I would think Johnny would agree with me, but the wives a lot of times raise our kids. And I hate to say it that way. I think it's gotten better, but it used to be really, really bad. I think it's people. Well, I mean, I think the church, I think FCA, I think a lot of things have driven us away from being so job. I mean, everything is about our job. I mean, and it has a tendency to get that way in coaching. I try to do a good job of protecting against it, but I'm always like, if we're sitting around, the staff's talking, we're done with practice, I remind them daily, if we're just talking about our lives and everything else, you are free to leave. If I'm talking about something that has to do with the program, then but if we just start talking, just having a good time, cutting up, leave whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait for me to leave.
Right.
I've never been big on. Matter of fact, I don't like that, because I had to wait on one before. So I think those things, and I think Johnny hit on it best, is just that you got to live it out, show them. I didn't do a good job of that the first go around at North Little Rock, but I will this time. I can promise you that. I'm a different coach this go around at it. So
I did things way different year 8, 9, 10 of me being the head coach than I did year 1, 2, 3.
no doubt.
So you're going to learn, and like you said, you learn really quick that here we are. We ain't won it in 40 years, and man, it was so the excitement doing all that. But you realize the guy down at the gas station didn't even have a clue you had. He don't even know what you coach. There's so many people it's not near as big as you think it is, because basketball's not, or sports is just not.
It's just a game.
Not with everybody. It's just a game. It's just exactly right.
The part of it, of being just a game, is the one part that I have really embraced this time around, especially after the first time and all the things that we went through. So I really, really get that part now. I remind the coaches all the time, even after we lose, even after we have a big win, when we went 14-0, I reminded the coaches at the after state championship game, guys, it's still just a game.
Yeah.
There's things that these kids have learned from this is way more valuable than the ring or any game that we played. It's just all the value that they learn about, if you do it the right way.
Right.
You know that from being an ex-player, but I don't know if I hit on it or not, but
yeah, I think I was about to say something along that lines, but I think you shifted what I was thinking too. Of a lot of times we look at like fighting through adversity, fighting through the losses of the season, but sometimes we forget what's our perspective when we're winning at the same time too. You go 14-0 and you're probably pretty high, riding pretty high on the season, and all of a sudden the wins are even bigger, and the glory is all of a sudden like we're in the middle of the Coliseum and your fist is in the air and you're saying strength and honor. But Yeah, I was sitting here thinking, even thinking about Coach Calipari this year and with the Hogs, and I'm a fan of a separate SEC team. We won't name them here for the sake of me getting out of here in one piece. But let's just say last year in basketball, they didn't win a single SEC game in SEC play, and I'm sitting here as a fan, like, okay, we can't let this coach come back here because he didn't even win a single game. And I'm sitting here thinking as a fan, like, we can't let that slide. We're in the SEC. This is the big house, right? And the same thing I think with Coach Cal this year is you have to give time, and you have to let the process work itself out. Essentially, I was thinking of a quote I heard. I read this book one time. I always like to say that, like I read a lot of books. One time I read a book, and this is what it said.
Wow.
Mental
note, FCA staff, read books.
Yeah. It said, the best leaders have the best perspective. And I think a lot of times when we're going through whatever situation we're going through, wins, losses, on the field, on the court, off the field, off the court, whatever that may be, I tell students this all the time. I said, well, I'm sure that hurt. I'm sure that was painful, but what did you learn from that? What's your perspective like now that you know that? I talk to my fiance all the time about that. We talk about just different things within ministry, within how do we approach people? How do we love on people with the perspective that we have of, maybe I was hurt by this one time. So how do I lead out of a place of, man, this hurt me and I don't want it to hurt you now. I think that's where passion comes a lot of time. Of, we have a lot more passion to pursue our student athletes. We have a lot more passion to pursue whatever the goal, whatever the objective is in front of us, when we have this perspective that comes from, man, you know what, like, this isn't right, or whatever that may be. And we serve a really big God, and we serve a God who serves justice. He is just in every aspect, in every way. And I think when we're thinking about how to model and live our lives like Jesus, he wasn't about just stepping aside and letting things happen. A lot of times he would step into a situation and love on people and love them well, but he was always about justice too. He went in and he flipped the tables when they were trying to sell in the temple. And I just think about that a lot of times. Of we get this idea in our head that we either have to sit on the sideline and wait for our opportunity and wait for the wins to come, so we have this pedestal to learn. But I think sometimes we need to use wherever we're at to share our perspective, because I think it's important too. Of, it doesn't matter if you're winning or losing at the end of the day. Like we were talking about before we even got on the show, like, who even knows who won the state championship 5 years ago? Like, there's some guy over there pointing his finger saying, oh, I know because I this and that. But I think at the end of the day, when we have this perspective, like you're saying, and when we have those seasons where we are isolated and can reflect a little bit, we learn a lot about ourselves, and we learn a lot about the ways we want to lead as well. So to kind of like extend on that humanizing factor of being a coach within a community, and especially a community here in Arkansas where they're very passionate about their sports here. I've learned that since moving here is there's no professional teams. And so it's woo pig or it's nothing. Right. And I'm sure the same thing at the high school level. It's a lot of, like you're saying about the lady at the gas station. It's like, well, how'd we do? How did we do? Like, we're all of a sudden a part of the team. What's something about coaching that people don't see or understand from the outside?
I think high school football coach or high school coaches, I'm sorry, Johnny, I didn't mean it like that, but high school coaches in general, and it's not college, but I think high school coaches in general are a lot of things. Parents, counselors, coaches, pastors. I mean, you can add to the list. I mean, it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a full-time job all the time, 24/7. It really is. But it's a great thing because it's about the kids. And so, if a kid's calling me, that's a good thing. I want them to call me. If they need something or they need help with something, that's a good thing. I want them calling me. So I think that's to me, we were talking about this earlier. The game, it's just a game, and the whole deal with all these things that you learn, and I mean, there is a lot these kids learn. And you run a program like he and I run it, and our boy Daryl Fimple, the girls basketball coach. When you run it that way, you change lives, and they're changed forever, and in a positive way. And we're seeing it because we're old enough to see our players with kids and wives and husbands, Daryl's girls. But I mean, it's just that part of it to me is the biggest blessing of it all. I mean, 14-0, beating Bryant state champ and winning the state championship. That was great. But that was in the moment stuff, you know. It was awesome in that moment. But there's no way I could relive that now. I don't even, the feelings of it or that's all gone. I mean, I'm still happy that we did it, but more importantly, how are those kids that won that state championship? What are they doing now, and how are they as young men? For me, young men. So that's kind of a little bit of my perspective on it, John.
I don't think people, the public, sees just the games and the X's and O's and players making shots, missing shots, turning them, you know, all those things. They don't see all the other things that go on. And like I said, it took me a while. It really took me to become the head coach to see that was the things I was supposed to stress to my kids and emphasize to whatever the kids are going to get, whatever you emphasize. If I'd have a practice plan I had every single day, and I'd have emphasis, I'd have what I wanted them to make sure they got that day. So that would be whatever. But if we don't emphasize teamwork and work ethic and being on time and being a good teammate and being courageous and I mean all those type of things, that's what people don't see, and that's that they don't understand and it's all relationships. And I kind of talked about that last time.
Yeah.
And then that's just the most important thing. He was talking about going to one of your former players' weddings, or going to have a birthday of their child, or going with the family whenever you've had to lay to rest with someone.
Yeah.
And I know you've dealt with that. I have too. I mean, those are the things that stick in. He's got 3 state championship rings. I got 6 sitting in a box sitting next to my bed.
Dusty too.
And that's the point I was going to get. I got to dust that off all the time.
Yeah.
I wear them every now and then. And I love looking at them, and I'm very proud of what we accomplished. But there's dust on that deal, and that's not what those relationships that were formed. That you hopefully that you helped them to grow into young men, because there's nothing teach life lessons like athletics.
I'll pick up the phone on mine. I know you'll do the same. If I find out something I'll call them in a heartbeat. They know. If I call them, you better be a dad. If you got a child, you better be being a dad. And if you got a wife, you better be taking care of her. That's one of my pet peeves. And I called one last week, and I will call them in a heartbeat for that, because they know better than that, you know, especially the ones that aren't doing right. So
even though they're outside of your program,
oh yeah, 100%
accountability still
100%.
It's incredible. So how do you balance that? So as believers in Jesus, and talking about pain and all that, and we're here on Beyond the Huddle with Brad Bolding and Johnny Rice, and just picking up conversation, just moving on. So in sports, there is a high need for accountability, but also as a believer of Jesus, there's an opportunity for grace. So as a coach, how do you display accountability and grace? One, with the coaches that you coach, coaches that you lead, and 2, with athletes that you coach.
You know, kids nowadays, they don't handle criticism, and some of them, and kids don't know the difference between correction and criticism. So we would get going in the season, and it might be week 2 or 3 in. I mean, the first 2 or 3 weeks, everybody's excited. So, man, everybody's going, and then that newness kind of wears off. You've been going 3 weeks, but you still got 6 weeks before we play a game. So the kids are looking, man, we're we're going to be doing the same stuff, whatever. And you're coaching them so I have to say on the court. I go, that's exactly right. Worry when because whenever you do something wrong, if it's in the classroom or if it's wherever, and I don't correct you or I'm not in you about it, I'm like, I'm saying I'm done with you, but I'm going on to the next person or whatever. There's when I would worry. And kids today have a hard time understanding that and grasping. So we'd have to remind them that a lot. And but part of being showing your faith is holding them accountable, but it's hard to hold a kid accountable when it's hard for me to hold a kid accountable by being late to practice. If I say we're going to practice at 3:00 and at 3:02 I come walking in the gym. Yeah. Even I could have been in my office or I could have been in, but they don't know that. I got to be out. So you got to model it, you got to show it, and then it gets more and more difficult. I hadn't coached in a couple of years, so I'm sure it's gotten more difficult now than it did. And especially you coming back and trying to build that culture. Culture is a huge thing. That was the big buzzword in my last few years was building a culture. And to do that, you still hear it today. You see Coach Sampson at Houston. He's always talking about the Houston way and their culture, the way they do things. And he's only going to recruit a certain type of kid to do it because they're the only one that can handle that culture. Not every kid can do it, and that's really big. And so, but you got to model it, and show it, and live it, and do all those things.
That's a lot of good stuff. A lot of that, I'm on the same page with him. One of the things that I'm big on is attacking not the person, but attacking what the issue is, the problem. And I will raise my voice. I mean, God raised his voice in me many a times. So if I'm going to be a parent or a coach and try to teach them the right way, they need to know that sometimes it's going to be not always going to be pretty. So sometimes I have to raise my voice to get their attention. Sometimes it's how they've grown up that you don't do that. Sometimes you go over there. I had a kid several years ago named Al T. Tenpenny. He's one of the best running backs come through Arkansas, the state of Arkansas. And he was one of those you couldn't, if you did that, if you yelled at him or did it in front of the team, it would not be a good deal. It's not, but if you went over to him and got it in his ear and said, let me tell you something, buddy, what you're doing right, he would run through a wall for you. Sure. So you have to figure out how your kids respond to criticism and coaching. I mean, sometimes coaching is in a gym, on the field. I have to be loud just so everybody can hear me. Right. A parent may take that as me getting on to a kid. It's just the nature of the business. As coaches, we just are loud. And I think from my coach's standpoint, this is a business. This is a job. So you have a job to do. And when you come in there, there's expectations. Now, I'll lay that all out for them in a coach's manual. We go over it detailed. So if you're not following the guidelines of what my expectations are, then there's issues. If you're doing what you're supposed to do as a coach and you're doing your job, I'm going to do things for you. I'm not just going to say, well, good job. I'm going to do things for those guys that are doing their job the way it's supposed to be done. I want the other people to realize that, you get rewarded for doing good things and doing what you're supposed to do. Right. And so I do the same thing with players. The other day, so we put a 20-pound weighted vest on you for punishment. All D's and F's, you get a weighted vest for D and two for F's. For every time grades come out, interim grades, I have one kid right now that has 21 days of vest. You have to do the whole workout with that vest on. So whatever you do, your squat mat, your percentages, you have to have that vest on. Very effective tool. I started that when I was here because when I first started here, I was in off season by myself. And so I was doing an hour's worth of punishment at the end of practice. I was getting home at 6:30, 6:40 in off season.
Right.
I'm like, we got to figure out a better way to do this. So the punishment was for emails, tardies, D's, F's, all that kind of stuff. You get the vest and you wear it during practice. And that's it. It has been one of the most effective tools I've used on players. And then as we get into the summer, when I got all my coaches, I'll get off this punishment thing. But when I get all my coaches in the summer, then we transition to a different way of doing it.
Sure.
But it has been effective, and the players respond to it. And I've been very pleased here in the last several weeks here of the change. And
That's great.
it's just, he talks about culture. Man, culture is the key to winning successfully every year. But if you don't build that foundation, and I believe I talked about this the last time I was here, if you don't build that foundation right, you're never going to reach the culture that you want. You have to have the best, strongest, thickest, widest foundation that you can possibly have. And if you do it that way, then that takes time, and it can get ugly. I mean, it's not pretty when you're building that foundation, but once you get it built, I mean, you can win year in and year out on a regular basis just because your kids believe and you got that culture, what Johnny talked about earlier.
You know, we've got about 10 minutes, 9 minutes
Sorry,
left.
I talked forever.
No, and I'm about to give you open mic to say however and whatever you want to. I know it's kind of scary when you do that, but you shared last time, and you talked about marriage, and you shared how your pastor in your church utilizes in yours and Jenna's marriage and your story, and to talk with people about reconciliation and coming back together and how all those things work. So with that said, last 10 minutes and 6, Zach can learn from this because he is engaged and he's not married yet. I mean, Johnny could speak to this, Brad and me, we all could speak to it because I'll be married 20 years coming up September, and not an expert at all on it. But can you share some personal challenges that you and Jenna have faced in your marriage and how they have impacted your faith journey?
This is a funny one. I squeeze the toothpaste from the bottom, and I like it. I don't like it all over. I don't like it all over. My wife is all over the place with the toothpaste. I actually had some arguments over this thing, over some darn toothpaste.
Absolutely.
And we laugh about it now and kid with each other, but that was a funny one. You know, with what we went through, me and my wife are almost like boyfriend and girlfriend, like we just started dating. I mean, and we've been remarried now for 5 years. I mean, so it's not like it's newlywed.
So in totality, how many years?
We got married in 2001, so 24 years.
Okay.
We were separated only about 6 months. We're divorced for about 6 months. So, but we were hold hands. You know, all the stuff that people our age aren't doing, we are doing.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a great example for people that are, you know, my age and older. I mean, man, it's your job. My dad will always tell me, if you called your wife and told her you loved her, if we're on a trip somewhere together, like a coach's clinic or something, my dad will always say, within 6 or 7 hours, he called your wife, told you you love her. He'll tell every coach there that.
That's awesome.
You know, and so me and my wife do that all the time. We go out, we have a date night a week. I mean, it's just been fun, man. It's just been a real blessing. God has blessed us unbelievable since all that tragic stuff and, you know, the valleys and all that stuff. He has really blessed our family. Unbelievable.
That's awesome. That's great.
I think something that's just been a common theme in our conversation to kind of hit on in the overarching scheme of things, and it kind of reminded me of some scripture I've heard before. But this idea that, like, why do we have punishment? Why do we have consequences for our actions? Why do we go through the things that we go through? It brought this to mind. This is John chapter 15, verses 9 through 13. It says, "As the Father has loved me," this is Jesus speaking here, "as the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friend.
Amen.
I think as I read through that, and as you're sitting here talking, it's a story of redemption, yes, and a story of grace, but the consequences have a reason, have a purpose too. And I think when we're talking about punishment with our teams, with the things that we've gone through, it's for a reason. It's because God has commanded us to love, and to love someone, no matter however that looks, but to biblically love someone is to help them continue to stay on the straight and narrow path that the Lord has set before us. So I think as you were speaking that, and as we've been talking, that's been kind of laid on my heart here. But
That's awesome.
yeah.
Any questions from you from that?
I mean, as a young person, you're kind of joking like, oh, we still hold hands and this and that. I love holding my fiance's hand. Like, that's something we do. Being engaged does mean, yes, we haven't been married yet. It was funny you said that earlier. I was going to make a joke, but I didn't want to be
just to
rude.
clarify.
Yeah, just
you
to clarify,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
is what that
yeah.
means. But
Yeah, it is.
Coach Rice, I'll call you Johnny. What has been the biggest lesson you've learned throughout your years of coaching that's been a catalyst for a successful marriage?
Well, marriage is compromise, but I think the number one thing that you should have is a Christian spouse. And I say that is you were saying all those things about Jesus, God's love for us, and one of the biggest parts of love is forgiveness. And I mean that the good Lord tells us to do that, but I've done things in my marriage and to my family that if my wife wasn't a Christian woman, she might not have forgave me for those things, and might not have helped to try to keep the family together or whatever. But I just think that's the most important thing in it, is that your spouse is a faithful, God-fearing Christian woman for me, and if it's a female coach, their spouse. I mean, I think that's important, because the things that happen in ours really don't have much with coaching, but you do. There's times that you get locked in coaching, and your marriage and kids become second, but you need that forgiving. But you also need that one that's going to hold that accountability. Like we said, it's going to let you know, hey, we need to step back a little bit. We still got this going on. And I just think I don't know how I could have been an effective coach without my wife, Terry, or a successful husband without her. And so I'm so thankful. But I think
My grandmother
biggest
told
part.
me one time, said, don't go to bed mad at each other.
Yes.
Always apologize. So if I was going to give you any advice, I'd give you that.
Well, that was my last question. You just answered. I was going to ask you, we got about 3 minutes left before we wrap up here. What advice would you give to other coaching couples struggling with pain, or struggling in a dark season where they don't think there's any way out but divorce, or like we're all done, there's too much pressure and everything else? Based off of your experiences, what would you give advice? What advice would you give other coaching couples?
I mean, I guess, and sports teaches us not to ever give up. I mean, just athletics and period. That's just one of the things that the life lessons that it teaches us. And, me and my wife, we'd be talking about another couple, and they say, the husband did this, or the wife did this. And back in my mind going, man, they'll be split up or do whatever. And she's like, she's had friends that she's felt bad about, that she told her friend you need to leave your husband. And then they stayed together, and man, they have the most blessed marriage now from it. And she's felt bad because of giving her that advice, but then she's turned around and used that, and to really encourage people to stay together and fight together, pray together, and do all that. Don't give up. And so that's been real influential to me. Is just her. I mean, it's the easy thing is to give up. It's the easiest thing that if you have a player is when he's acting up is to kick him off. That's the easy thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's what everybody thinks you should
Mm-hmm.
do. That kid did this, you got to kick him off. That's the easy thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
You're not mentoring, you're not ministering, you're not doing anything for that kid when you kick him off. But it's the same way in our marriage. Marriages is the easy thing to do is throw in the towel. Over half of the marriages, that's what they do, and they don't fight for it. So, encouraging coaches to fight, realize who's right. And I mean, there might be right and wrong, but there is compromise and stuff like that. So,
yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I mean, all those things you said, you took words out of my mouth, and I just think living it is the key. My wife and I do, and I think that's the most important. It's just you and your spouse. As a coach, you and your spouse live your lives as a good example for them to see. And I share my story to my coach. All my coaches know my story. I don't hide anything. I'm not proud of it, but there's a lot of value in sharing it.
Well, guys, we thank you for coming. Thanks for being for part 2 of the Beyond the Huddle podcast, Fellowship Central Arkansas Coaches and Athletes. This is on Faith Talk Radio 99.5, and every Monday a new episode will air on the radio at 6 p.m. We invite you to join if you listen to radio. If not, it's on all the podcast locations. So thank you guys for being here, and we'll call it